I bought 2 tickets for Christmas Eve. One for her. One for me. It was supposed to be our tradition. A quiet night under fairy lights. Hands wrapped around hot chocolate, whispering dreams too fragile for daylight. But this year, the other seat stayed empty. Her laughter wasn't there to fill the silence. Her scarf wasn't tossed over my shoulder like she used to. Only the hum of strangers and the glow of the stage lights kept me company. I should have known she wouldn't come. After all, she'd already stopped showing up long before that night, first in her messages, then in her eyes, and finally in the way she said my name like it was a duty. Not a promise, but still, I looked beside me. Again and again, as if somehow my love could rewrite time. Instead, I saw her across the room, her fingers intertwined with another's. The seat wasn't empty. It was just never mine to fill anymore. And yet I smiled. Because love, I realized, isn't about waiting for someone to return. It's about learning to leave the seat empty on purpose. That night, I tore her ticket in half. The sound was small, but it felt like thunder. That was the night I stopped loving her. Or maybe, that was the night I started loving myself. Snow fell that night like the sky was breaking in silence. The streets were almost empty, just the hum of passing cars and the distant echo of laughter from people who still believed in warmth. I remember tightening my coat, my breath turning to mist, and thinking how even the cold felt lonelier during December. That's when I saw her. She stood under the dim yellow light of the old theater marquee, her figure trembling in the wind. Snowflakes landed in her hair like tiny white confessions, melting too quickly to stay. She held a crumpled flyer against her chest. Christmas Eve play, one night only. Her lips moved slightly, as if whispering the title to herself. Maybe rehearsing courage. For a moment, I thought she looked lost. Then she looked up and smiled. It wasn't the practiced smile people give to strangers. It was fragile, uncertain, almost apologetic. Yet somehow it warmed the space between us. The lights above us flickered, like the world had paused to take a breath. I don't know if it was the electricity or fate, but I remember thinking, this moment is dangerous. She laughed softly when the lights steadied again. I think I missed the show. Not yet, I said, though I hadn't checked the time. Sometimes the best parts start late. Her laugh, it wasn't loud. It was like the sound snow makes when it lands, gentle, private. She shivered then, her gloved hands rubbing together. I took off my scarf without thinking. Here, I said. She shook her head. You'll freeze. I'm already freezing. Pause. Then she took it, wrapping it around her neck with a hesitant smile. You'll catch a cold for me someday, she murmured. She didn't know how right she was. Inside, the theater was half empty. Dust lingered in the air, catching the light like tiny ghosts of laughter. We found 2 seats near the middle. Not too close, not too far. She sat with her arms folded, trying to hide her excitement behind indifference. Do you come to these plays often? She asked. Only when it snows, I said. Why? Because snow makes everything feel like it matters. She looked at me for a long time, then turned back to the stage. The orchestra began to tune their instruments, a trembling chorus of strings and sighs. When the first note played, I felt her hand brush against mine. Not deliberate. Not accidental either. Just there, and in that simple touch, the world felt softer. During intermission, shared a paper cup of cocoa from the small stand near the back. Steam rose between us like a secret. Neither of us dared to speak. She told me her name softly, like she was testing whether I'd remember it. I'm a little obsessed with stories, she said, blowing on her drink. Especially the sad ones. They make the happy parts shine more. I nodded, watching the light reflect in her eyes. Then you'll love this one, I said. It's about 2 people who meet in winter, but don't realize it's their last. She blinked. You've seen it before? No, I said quietly. Just a feeling. She smiled again, that slow, half-curved smile that felt like it was written just for me. When the final act began, the audience fell silent. On stage, the characters confessed love too late, the curtain falling just before they could find each other again. The girl beside me didn't move, her eyes glistening in the flicker of stage light. And in that stillness I realized she wasn't watching the play. She was feeling it. Like each word was written somewhere inside her chest. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words refused to leave. Because somehow, silence felt sacred between us. When the curtain fell, she clapped softly, eyes shining. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, though I was looking at her, not the stage. Outside, the snow had grown heavier. She stepped into the white, her boots sinking into the soft ground. The world looked quieter, like we had walked into a dream no one else could see. "Thank you," she said, pulling my scarf tighter. "For tonight, for the warmth." I wanted to ask if I'd see her again, but the words caught in my throat. Maybe some part of me already knew the best things that happen by chance rarely happen twice. She waved once, that same fleeting smile on her lips, and disappeared down the snowy street for a long time. I stood there, watching her footprints fade. The snow kept falling, covering the evidence that she'd ever been there. And when I finally walked away, I realized I didn't even ask her last name, but her laughter lingered like music after the curtain closes. And that night, I thought love was as simple as being found in winter. I was wrong. Love, I'd later learn, is rarely that kind. They say love is built from the small things, the quiet hours, the half smiles, the forgotten mornings that somehow linger in memory longer than the big moments. And for a while, that was us. Our love lived in details. In the playlist we made together, songs that started soft and ended in silence. In the half-written letters she left on my desk, folded neatly as if she meant to finish them someday, but never did. In the way she'd lean across the cafe table every Sunday morning, eyes half awake, tracing circles on the rim of her cup while she talked about dreams that scared her. I used to listen to her like people listen to music, not to respond, but to remember. Her favorite cafe smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon. It became our ritual, the same corner seat by the frosted window where we'd watch the city breathe. I'd arrive early, order her usual caramel latte, extra foam, and leave her name written in a heart on the cup. She always laughed at that, pretending to roll her eyes. But she never asked me to stop. We talked about everything then. Her fear of growing old, my fear of being forgotten. She once told me, "You notice things nobody else does." I didn't tell her that noticing her was the easiest thing I'd ever done. That winter, we took the train out of the city just to watch the snow fall over the river. She drew a heart on the fogged glass, then wiped it away before I could take a picture. "Some things aren't meant to last," she said with a smile. I laughed then, but her words stayed. Over time, love began to quiet itself. Not disappear, just ... dim. She'd sit across from me, scrolling through her phone, smiling at messages I didn't write. The sound of her laughter, once warm and familiar, started to feel like an echo from another life. She still said, "I love you," but it began to sound like a habit, like brushing your teeth or locking the door. I told myself it was fine, that all long stories grow still somewhere in the middle. So I filled the silence with small things again, texts in the morning, sketches of her I never showed her, playlists she stopped listening to. And every night I'd open the small wooden box under my bed, the one where I kept our movie tickets. Concert stubs, coffee receipts, proof that we existed, proof that I wasn't dreaming. Christmas came again, our third together. The city glittered with lights, and the theater put up the same poster as always, a Christmas play, Love Beneath the Snow. It had become our tradition. Front row, left corner, the seat where her laughter had once filled the space between the violin and the applause. I bought the tickets early that year, sent her a picture. She replied with a heart emoji. No words. The night before, she called. "Hey," she said, her voice light, distracted. "Let's skip it this year. I'm busy." There was a sound in the background, faint music, a man's voice laughing. "Busy," I repeated. "Yeah, just things came up." And then the line went quiet. Not the kind of silence that means peace. The kind that makes your chest ache because you realize you're the only one still holding the conversation. I didn't argue. I just said, "Sure, Maybe next year, she said. You're the best, and hung up. That night, I sat alone with the tickets spread out on my table. The city lights outside blinked like they were mocking me. Too bright. Too alive. I ran my fingers over the print, over her name written in blue ink on the back of one. The paper bent beneath my thumb, and I heard it, a small, fragile sound. A crack. Not loud enough for her to hear. Just enough for me to feel something breaking quietly inside. I thought about calling her. About saying, "You forgot, but I didn't." Instead, I folded the tickets back into the box, slipped them under the bed, and sat there listening to the hum of the heater. It was strange how even warmth can start to feel cold when the person it's meant for isn't there. Days passed, and weeks. She still texted sometimes, the kind of short, polite messages that feel like obligation. "Hope you're eating well. Been busy. Sorry." I answered every time. I told myself love was about patience. But I was beginning to learn that sometimes patience is just another word for denial. One night it snowed again. I walked past the theater, the same one where we'd first met. The lights flickered above the marquee, the same way they had that night. For a moment I almost saw her standing there with the flyer in her hands. Cheeks flushed from the cold, but when I blinked, it was only me. The world was still beautiful, but it had stopped being ours. And as I stood there in the falling snow, I realized you don't always lose someone all at once. Sometimes you lose them in pieces. One Sunday, one message. One skip tradition at a time, until all that's left is the echo of laughter and a box of old tickets to remind you that once you were loved. It was Christmas Eve again. The city glowed like it was trying too hard to be happy, streets drowned in gold lights, the air thick with the sound of carols, laughter, and false warmth. I held 2 tickets in my hand, the paper slightly crumpled from the cold. One for her, one for me. I told myself I wasn't nervous, just nostalgic. That maybe tonight would fix what the silence had broken. She'd said she would come this time. Her last message was short. "I'll be there. Don't worry." But even hope, I've learned, can be a cruel addiction. It makes you believe in ghosts. So I waited in the theater lobby, pretending to check my phone, pretending not to notice the couples taking photos under the wreaths. Her name lit up on my screen once, a notification that said typing ... but the message never came. Still, I entered the theater. Alone. The lights dimmed and the curtain rose. I sat in our usual spot, front row, left corner. The same seat where her laughter used to live. Her absence sat beside me like a shadow that wouldn't leave. The play began. The stage bathed in warm light, 2 lovers in winter, promising forever beneath falling snow. The irony wasn't lost on me. Halfway through the second act, I felt it. That strange pull, the instinct that tells you you're being watched, or that someone you love is close enough to touch, but no longer yours to reach for. I turned my head slowly, almost unwillingly, and there she was. Same row. Different seat. She looked beautiful, too beautiful, maybe. Her hair tied back in the same way she used to before our first Christmas together. She was laughing. That same soft laugh that once melted the ice around my heart. But the arm around her shoulders didn't belong to me. I froze. For a heartbeat, the sound around me faded. The music, the dialogue, the applause. Everything turned into a dull hum, like being underwater. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder. He leaned in, whispered something, and she smiled, that gentle, slow smile she once gave me after I'd made her coffee too sweet. My hands clenched around the ticket stub in my pocket. Not because of anger, but because I didn't know what else to hold on to. And in that moment, I realized the cruelest part of love isn't being replaced. It's watching someone else get the version of her you begged thee. Universe 4, the version that stayed awake with you on cold nights. The version that said, "I'll never leave." I really did. But my body wouldn't move, because walking away would have meant I still cared enough to do something about it, and I was too tired to care anymore. The play continued. The actors confessed, cried, forgave. On stage, everything found its way back to love. Off stage, I sat surrounded by strangers, watching the story I'd once lived now rewritten without me. When the final act began, fake snow started to fall from above the stage. The audience gasped in wonder. I just stared at it. Flakes of paper drifting like broken promises beside me. Her laughter echoed again, soft, bright, familiar. It reached me, but didn't touch me. For a moment, I imagined what it would feel like to stand up, walk over, and meet her eyes. To ask her quietly, was any of it real? But I didn't. Some answers aren't worth hearing out loud. Instead, I stayed seated, watching the ending play out. The lovers reunited under the falling snow, whispering words that used to belong to us. And when the final light dimmed, I looked at the empty seat beside me. The seat that used to hold her warmth, her scent, her laughter, it looked untouched. As if no one had ever sat there at all, the applause thundered through the room. But it all felt distant. A storm on the other side of a wall. I didn't clap. I just whispered, barely audible over the noise. Merry Christmas. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was just acceptance, quiet and fragile. The curtain fell. The audience rose. And I sat there for a long time, letting everyone leave before me. When I finally stepped outside, the snow had begun to fall again, soft, silent, endless. I tilted my head up, letting the flakes sting against my skin. The city lights blurred through the snowfall, and for the first time, I didn't look for her in the crowd, because maybe love isn't something you lose all at once. Maybe it's something that dies quietly, one unreturned text, one skipped promise, one Christmas at a time, and maybe the real goodbye is the one you say to an empty seat, knowing she'll never fill it again. The weeks after felt endless at first, like walking through a house where every door led to a memory. I'd wake up expecting a message, a call, a simple good morning that never came. Silence became its own language, and slowly, I began to understand it. The first thing I did was delete her photos, not in anger, just necessity. One by one, I watched her fade from my gallery, the beach trip, the cafe mornings, the blurry selfie under the Christmas lights. My thumb hovered over each picture like it was a goodbye kiss I hadn't given. But no matter how many files I erased, she stayed. In the quiet moments between songs, in the ghost of her perfume on my old jacket, in the way I still caught myself turning to say something, only to find no one there. That's the thing about love. It doesn't end when it's over. It just changes form. I learned to cook for one again. At first I made too much habit, I guess. 2 plates, 2 forks. The empty chair across the table stared back like a question I didn't know how to answer. But little by little, the portions got smaller. I started burning the garlic less, measuring the rice right. I'd pour myself a glass of wine, play her old playlist, and pretend the songs didn't sting anymore. Some nights I even laughed. Not the kind of laughter that fills a room, just a quiet exhale that reminded me I was still here. Writing saved me. Or maybe it just gave my pain a place to live that wasn't my chest. I wrote about heartbreak, not hers. Not mine, but the kind that belongs to everyone who's ever loved too much. I wrote about ghosts that linger in empty seats, about promises folded into letters never sent. People started reading them online. They said my stories felt real. Maybe because they were. Each word I typed felt like reclaiming something she took when she left my voice. My worth, my ability to feel without breaking. It was strange, watching. Strangers find healing in what had nearly destroyed me. But maybe that's what pain is supposed to do, be recycled into something beautiful. One evening, I was walking home from work when I passed the old theater. It's the same one where we met, where we ended. The marquee still flickered faintly, its light struggling against the winter fog. They were playing the same show, Love Beneath the Snow. The irony almost made me smile, and then I saw her. She was standing by the entrance, wrapped in a red scarf, her hair shorter now. There was someone beside her, a man, tall, with his hand resting casually on her back. She laughed at something he said, that same soft laugh that once belonged to me. For a second, the air left my lungs. Not because I missed her, but because she finally looked free, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. I didn't hide or look away or wish to trade places with him. I just kept walking, because I finally understood not every story needs a second act. Some just end where they're supposed to. The snow began to fall as I reached the corner of the street. It reminded me of that first night, the way everything looked softer under white. But this time, the cold didn't bite. It felt clean. It's like starting over. When I got home, I sat by my window and wrote another story. Not about her. Not about loss. About someone learning to fall in love with the quiet. Halfway through, I stopped to open the drawer. The small wooden box was still there, untouched, the one that held all our old tickets. I hadn't opened it in months. My fingers brushed over the lid, tracing the grain like a scar. For a moment, I thought about throwing it away, but I didn't, because forgetting isn't the same as healing. I didn't want to erase proof that I'd loved someone deeply once, that, for a time, I was brave enough to believe in forever. Sometimes late at night I imagine the two of us sitting in that theater again, not as lovers, but as strangers who once shared a season. She turns, our eyes meet, and we both smile softly, knowingly, before the curtain falls. No apologies, no explanations, just peace. I think that's what freedom really is, not revenge, not indifference. Just the quiet certainty that you survived what was meant to break you. The city outside hums with life again, laughter spilling from cafes, the smell of roasted chestnuts in the cold air. For the first time in years, I step out without waiting for anyone to walk beside me, and as the snow gathers in my hair, I whisper to no one in particular, I'm okay now, because this time, I finally mean it. This year, I bought one ticket. Just one. It felt strange at the counter saying my name, paying for a single seat, not correcting the cashier when she asked, only one? I smiled politely. Only one, I repeated, because this time, it wasn't an absence. It was a decision. Outside, the air was sharp with winter. The streets shimmered with gold lights, reflections gliding over puddles left by melting snow. Every carol that played seemed softer, less intrusive, like background music to a story I had finally finished reading. For the first time, I wasn't late. I wasn't waiting for anyone. And the theater, with its familiar creaks and faded scent of dust and velvet, felt less like a shrine to my past and more like a place to breathe again. The usher led me down the aisle, front row, left corner. The same spot I had chosen every Christmas. Only now, the seat beside me was deliberately empty as I sat. The cushion exhaled a faint sigh beneath me, as if it remembered. The wooden armrest still had the tiny scratch from the time she dropped her ring there and laughed, saying it was our mark. For a heartbeat, I let the memory surface. Her voice, her warmth, the way she'd always grip my hand when the lights dimmed. Then I exhaled slow, steady, and let the silence settle. Because tonight wasn't about remembering her. It was about remembering me. The orchestra began to tune. The sound rose and fell like the tide, violins trembling in anticipation. The cello humming beneath it all like a heartbeat. I closed my eyes, and for a brief moment, I imagined the seat beside me wasn't empty, that she was still there, humming softly, the scent of peppermint on her breath. But when I opened my eyes, the truth was simple, uncruel. The seat was still vacant, and somehow that emptiness didn't ache anymore. It just existed. As the play began, the stage lit up in shades of gold and frost. The story was the same as every year, two people lost in winter, searching for warmth they thought they'd never find. I used to love it because it mirrored us. Now I loved it because it no longer had to. When the first snowfall fell on stage, white paper flakes tumbling in soft arcs, I felt something stir inside me. Not sadness. Not nostalgia. Peace. I glanced toward the empty seat and smiled faintly. That space had once been a wound, raw and gaping. Now it was a scar, quiet proof that healing had happened there. Halfway through the performance, a woman in the next row turned and caught my eye. She smiled politely, a stranger's smile, kind and brief, before turning back to the stage. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't fate. It was just human connection, and it was enough. I realized maybe love isn't always about romance. Sometimes it's the warmth of strangers breathing the same air, watching the same story unfold. Sometimes it's knowing that loneliness can be gentle if you let it. As the play reached its final act, the characters reunited under the falling snow. The audience held its breath, waiting for the confession, the embrace, the inevitable kiss. But I wasn't watching them anymore. I was watching the snow. The way it fell softly, freely, not needing to stay anywhere, just content in its descent. The music swelled, violins stretching like dawn over a sleeping city. The lights dimmed, and the final words echoed through the theater. Some loves end. Others change shape, but all of them leave warmth behind. I didn't cry this time. I didn't even feel the urge to. Instead, I whispered quietly, not to her, not to the empty seat, but to myself. I'm happy you existed. But I'm happier I do too. When the applause began, I joined in. My palms met each other, steady and unshaking. The sound filled the room, rich and alive, and for once, I wasn't clapping for what I'd lost. I was clapping for what I'd become. The lights rose, and people started leaving in pairs, in groups, in laughter. I stayed for a moment longer. The empty seat beside me looked peaceful now, not lonely, not haunting. It's just part of the story? A reminder of where I'd been, of who I'd loved, and of how I'd survived it all. As I walked out into the night, the snow had started falling again, slow and silver under the glow of the street lamps. The air bit my cheeks, but it felt clean, refreshing. I passed the old cafe we used to visit, still open, its window fogged with warmth. Inside, a couple shared a slice of cake, their laughter spilling softly through the glass. For a moment, I watched them. Then I smiled, not out of envy, but understanding. Some seats are meant to be filled. Others are meant to stay empty, so we remember how far we've come. When I got home, I placed the single ticket in the wooden box with the old ones. It didn't feel like a collection anymore. It felt like closure. As I shut the lid, thought crossed my mind, gentle and freeing. This story was never about who sat beside me. It was always about the person I became while learning to sit alone, and for the first time, the silence in the room didn't echo. It sang.